Imagine for a moment that you're living your life on autopilot, repeating the same routines, making the same choices, and yet wondering why the results never seem to change. You feel stuck, frustrated, maybe even defeated. But what if I told you that the chains holding you back aren't external, they're inside you? They are the invisible patterns, the habits, the fears, the beliefs you've carried for years without even realizing it. And here's the truth, you don't have to stay there. Right now, in this very moment, you have the power to break free. You have the power to disrupt the patterns that have dictated your life, to step into a new way of being where your actions align with your deepest desires. But freedom doesn't come by wishing. It comes by noticing what's holding you back, by feeling the discomfort of growth, and by taking bold, intentional action that sets a new trajectory for your life. Today, we're going to awaken that power within you, confront the patterns that have limited you, and ignite the unstoppable momentum that will carry you toward the life you've always imagined. Most people live their lives under the illusion that they are in control, yet in reality, much of what they do, think, and feel is governed by invisible patterns that have been formed over years, sometimes decades. These patterns can take the form of habits, routines, reactions, or deeply held beliefs that operate beneath the surface of conscious thought. They dictate how we respond to challenges, how we interpret success and failure, and even how we relate to the people around us. The invisible nature of these patterns is what makes them so powerful and, at the same time, so dangerous. Because they operate quietly, often without our conscious awareness, they can keep us trapped in cycles of mediocrity, frustration, or self-sabotage. The moment we recognize that our behaviors are not always the result of deliberate choice, but rather automatic responses conditioned by past experiences, we open the door to real change. Many of these patterns originate in childhood, where our brains were wired to survive and adapt to our environment. For example, a child who grew up in a critical environment might internalize beliefs of inadequacy, learning to avoid taking risks for fear of judgment. As adults, these same beliefs manifest in subtle ways: hesitation in pursuing opportunities, self-doubt when making decisions, or a reluctance to step into leadership roles. The problem is that most people do not pause to question why they act the way they do. They assume they're current. Reality is simply a product of circumstances, talent, or luck, not recognizing the patterns beneath the surface that shape their daily choices. It's also important to understand that these patterns are reinforced over time. Every time we act in a familiar way, the brain strengthens neural pathways, making it easier to repeat the behavior and harder to break free. This is why habits, both empowering and limiting, feel so automatic and inevitable. However, being trapped in these patterns is not a reflection of weakness. It is simply a consequence of human wiring and adaptation. The critical step is developing awareness, becoming a student of your own behaviors and identifying the moments where your actions are being guided by old, unhelpful patterns rather than conscious intention. Once you recognize these patterns, you gain the opportunity to intervene, to choose differently, and to consciously design new pathways that serve your goals rather than hinder them. Understanding that your patterns are not permanent, that they can be observed, interrupted, and transformed is the first step toward reclaiming control of your life. People often resist this idea because it requires self-honesty, courage, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths about themselves. Yet, every person who has transformed their life has done so by acknowledging that they were being held back by invisible patterns, that they were operating on autopilot, and that change begins with seeing the mechanisms that have secretly been running their lives. The awareness that you are not simply a passive product of circumstance, but an active participant capable of breaking the cycle is both liberating and empowering. By identifying these invisible chains, you position yourself at the threshold of transformation, ready to move from unconscious repetition to deliberate creation, from limitation to possibility, from being stuck to stepping into a life defined by conscious choice and intention. Awareness is the cornerstone of transformation, and without it, true change is nearly impossible. Most people go through life reacting automatically to circumstances, repeating the same behaviors and wondering why their results never improve. The problem is not a lack of desire or effort. The problem is that they are unaware of the patterns that govern their thoughts, emotions, and actions. Awareness begins with noticing what is happening inside you, your thoughts, your emotional reactions, the stories you tell yourself, and the habits that guide your daily life. It requires slowing down, stepping back, and observing your life from a place of curiosity rather than judgment. This is where many people struggle because self-reflection demands honesty. It requires admitting that certain beliefs or behaviors may no longer serve you, that they may be holding you back from the life you want. For instance, you might recognize that every time an opportunity arises, a voice in your head whispers doubt, telling you are not ready, not capable, or not deserving. That voice is a manifestation of a limiting pattern, and without awareness, it continues to control your decisions and keep you confined to what is familiar and safe. Developing awareness is not just about recognizing negative patterns. It is also about identifying the moments where you feel powerful, energized, and fully engaged. These moments reveal what works for you, what aligns with your strengths, values, and passions. Awareness allows you to discern between behaviors that propel you forward and those that hold you back. It is the lens through which you can evaluate your life objectively, noticing the small, seemingly insignificant choices that over time accumulate into patterns that define your reality. One of the most profound aspects of awareness is that it creates space for choice. When you are unconscious, you are simply reacting. When you are aware, you have the opportunity to respond differently. Awareness shines a light on the automatic responses that have been guiding you, giving you the power to interrupt them and create new, more effective ways of thinking and acting. The process of cultivating awareness can be as simple as asking yourself reflective questions. What am I feeling right now? Why am I reacting this way? What story am I telling myself about this situation? These questions, when asked consistently, build a habit of self-observation that uncovers the invisible forces shaping your life. Awareness also allows you to detect the subtle triggers that provoke negative emotions, unhealthy habits, or self-limiting thoughts. Once you can identify the triggers, you can anticipate them, prepare for them, and ultimately neutralize their control over you. This process transforms reactive living into conscious living, where you are not at the mercy of circumstance, but are actively choosing your responses. Without awareness, change remains superficial, temporary, or elusive because the root causes of behavior remain hidden. With awareness, you can pinpoint the exact patterns that need to shift, creating a foundation for lasting transformation and the ability to take intentional steps toward a life that reflects your deepest goals, values, and aspirations. Change is not a product of wishful thinking or fleeting motivation. It is the result of intentional action taken consistently over time. Many people desire transformation. They dream of a better life, improved relationships, or greater success, but they fail to recognize that desire alone is not enough. Momentum is built through doing, through taking steps that may feel uncomfortable, unfamiliar, or even risky. Intentional action requires clarity about what needs to change and the courage to move forward, even when the path is uncertain. It begins with setting specific, meaningful goals that reflect your values and aspirations, rather than goals imposed by external expectations or societal pressures. Once clarity is established, action must follow. Often the biggest barrier is not lack of resources or knowledge, but the inertia created by fear, doubt, and habitual patterns. People hesitate, waiting for the perfect moment, or they take half-hearted measures that maintain the status quo rather than disrupt it. True progress requires bold, decisive steps, even if they are small, repeated consistently over time. Each step forward creates a ripple effect in the brain and in life, reinforcing new neural pathways that replace old habits and limiting patterns. These actions, no matter how modest at first, accumulate into momentum, a force that carries you past obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. The key is to break change into actionable, manageable pieces. Large, abstract goals can be overwhelming and paralyzing, but when you focus on concrete actions, the process becomes tangible. It is in the execution of these small steps that transformation occurs. Each step is an opportunity to learn, adjust, and reinforce the belief that change is possible. Action also fuels confidence. When you act deliberately, you prove to yourself that you are capable, that you can create results rather than simply hope for them. Confidence, in turn, accelerates progress, making it easier to take even bigger steps, face greater challenges, and stretch beyond your comfort zone. Importantly, intentional action is not only about quantity, but also about quality. It requires mindful engagement, the willingness to assess whether what you are doing is moving you toward your goal or merely keeping you busy. Reflection and adaptation are critical. Action without insight can perpetuate old patterns under a new guise. Another essential aspect is persistence. Change is rarely linear, and setbacks are inevitable. Intentional action means continuing to move forward despite difficulties, using obstacles as opportunities to refine strategy and deepen resilience. Many people stop at the first sign of resistance, but those who achieve lasting transformation embrace the discomfort, knowing that it signals growth. Accountability is also a powerful accelerator. Sharing your goals, tracking your progress, or partnering with someone who challenges and supports you increases the likelihood of sustained action. Ultimately, the difference between those who remain stuck and those who break free from limiting patterns is not simply knowledge or inspiration, it is consistent, purposeful action taken over time with awareness, courage, and an unwavering commitment to move toward the life they envision. Fear and discomfort are often viewed as obstacles, signs that something is wrong or that we should retreat, but in reality, they are signals of growth and opportunity. Every person who has achieved extraordinary success or transformation has had to face moments of intense fear, uncertainty, and discomfort. These feelings are not indicators that we are failing, they are indicators that we are pushing the boundaries of what is familiar and stepping into new territory. Growth never occurs in the comfort zone because the comfort zone is, by definition, a space of repetition, safety, and predictability. When we encounter fear, it is usually because we are about to expand beyond habitual patterns that have defined us for years or even decades. The key is to recognize fear and discomfort not as enemies to avoid, but as guides that point to the areas in our lives that need transformation. The first step is to acknowledge fear without judgment, to observe it, and to understand what it is trying to communicate. Often fear arises from uncertainty, from the unknown outcomes that accompany change, or from the possibility of failure or rejection. While these feelings can be paralyzing, they also present the opportunity to act courageously, to choose action in spite of fear, and to cultivate resilience. Discomfort works in a similar way. It is the body and mind's response to stretching beyond current limits. When we feel uneasy in a situation, it often signals that we are being challenged to think differently, develop new skills, or confront limiting beliefs. Avoiding discomfort keeps us in a state of stagnation, where potential remains unrealized, but leaning into it accelerates growth. The process of embracing fear and discomfort requires a shift in mindset. Instead of seeing these sensations as threats, we must reframe them as evidence that we are moving in the right direction. Each time we take action despite fear, we weaken the control that old patterns and limiting beliefs have over us. Over time, repeated exposure to discomfort builds tolerance and confidence, creating a cycle in which fear becomes a catalyst rather than a barrier. This is why some of the most transformative experiences in life are also the most uncomfortable. Facing a difficult conversation, pursuing a bold career move, confronting personal insecurities, or breaking a lifelong habit all provoke fear, yet these are the moments that lead to profound change. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in its presence. By embracing fear and discomfort, we also develop emotional resilience, learning to navigate uncertainty, setbacks, and challenges with poise and determination. It becomes clear that the sensations we once tried to avoid are actually essential companions on the path to personal evolution. They highlight where we have been confined by patterns, reveal where we have the capacity to grow, and provide the fuel necessary to move forward with intention, determination, and clarity. Those who learn to lean into these feelings consistently find that fear loses its power to control them. Discomfort becomes a signal of progress, and life expands into realms that once seemed impossible to reach. True liberation comes when we move beyond simply recognizing the patterns that hold us back and begin intentionally replacing them with behaviors, thoughts, and beliefs that empower us. Most people spend their lives reacting to circumstances, allowing old habits and conditioned responses to dictate their reality. But the moment you decide to consciously choose differently, you step into a new level of personal power. Transformation is not about suppressing old patterns or wishing they would disappear. It is about understanding them, learning from them, and then actively designing new patterns that align with your goals, values, and deepest desires. This process requires deliberate practice, patience, and self-compassion because old habits are deeply ingrained, often reinforced over decades, and the mind will naturally resist change. The first step is to identify the specific patterns that limit you, whether they are fear-based reactions, self-critical thoughts, procrastination habits, or unhealthy behaviors. Once these patterns are identified, the next step is to replace them with constructive, empowering alternatives. For example, if you have a tendency to respond to challenges with self-doubt, you might create a new pattern of affirming your abilities, taking proactive steps, and reflecting on past successes. Repetition is crucial here because the brain learns through neural pathways. Each time you choose the empowering behavior over the old pattern, the new pathway strengthens, gradually replacing the old. Another essential aspect of this transformation is consistency. Changing patterns is not a one-time effort. It requires ongoing attention, reinforcement, and adjustment. Life will continue to present stressors, temptations, and triggers that test your new behaviors, and maintaining conscious choice in these moments ensures that change becomes permanent. Account tab. Accountability also plays a critical role in this process. Sharing your intentions with a trusted mentor, friend, or coach can provide external reinforcement, encouragement, and perspective, helping you stay committed to the behaviors that support your growth. Equally important is cultivating a supportive environment, one that reinforces your new patterns and minimizes exposure to influences that trigger old habits. True empowerment emerges when these intentional behaviors become integrated into your identity. It is not merely about performing new actions temporarily, it is about reshaping how you see yourself, how you interpret challenges, and how you engage with the world. As your patterns shift, you begin to act from a place of conscious choice rather than unconscious repetition, making decisions that consistently align with your highest aspirations. The result is a life that is no longer dictated by past conditioning or external circumstances, but guided by your values, vision, and deliberate intention. This is the essence of freedom, the ability to respond to life with clarity, purpose, and agency. The power of consciously replacing old patterns lies not only in achieving goals, but in creating a sustainable framework for continuous growth. Every action, thought, and belief you cultivate intentionally reinforces your capacity to thrive, to innovate, and to live with a sense of mastery over your destiny. By committing to this process, you step into a life designed by choice rather than default, where limitations are replaced with possibilities, fears are transformed into opportunities, and the patterns that once constrained you become the foundation for lasting success and fulfillment.